Hi, it's Lynda from Valo Financial,
And I'm Naomi from Brand Whisperers.
and we're here today to have a conversation around doing business better.
And when we say doing business better, what we're talking about is rather than following like business rules or business the conventional way, it's tapping into your own self-awareness to do business your way and the way it works for you.
So I use the lens of archetypes and to be able to, I guess, view our financial behavior and the way that we do finances in a particular way. And Naomi uses personality typing.
Yeah, and I use personality typing to help people brand their businesses and understand what marketing strategies they might like to use or might feel good for them to use. And Lynda traditionally uses money types. We're not talking about that today because that's a bit too much. That's the archetype that she uses. But the thing that Lynda and I both have in common is we both have a real interest in business design, like how to design our businesses better to work for us. And Lynda, over the last few years, has been working alongside with me with her clients, learning about the personality system that I use. So she's got some great experience and stories about how she's seen business owners do their businesses better. So that's what we're going to tap into today. We're just going to have a casual conversation around 3 pillars of business. So building your suite of offers and the business model that you prefer to use, making and managing money, and branding and marketing. So how do you want to kick this off, Lynda? Do you want me to just ask you a question and we'll get started?
Yes, that sounds awesome.
Cool. Okay. So the point 1, so what have you observed about different personality types and their business offerings and business models?
Yeah, in my experience, I've actually found that the energy levels of business owners varies depending on how they construct their business models and what their suite of offer is. And so some people might be familiar with some of the personality typing, like the Myers-Briggs stuff. So if we, I guess, use those 4-letter codes when we're chatting today, like I'm an ENFP.
Yep.
So if anybody listening to this actually wants to be able to work out what their 4-letter code is, if they're unsure of that, they can jump over to the Brand Whisperers website and do the quiz. But just so you know, yeah, there is, I guess, that there to be able to understand what we're referring to if you're not sure of it already. So in my observation, I actually have really started, I guess, to see that if a business owner is working in a way that actually is kind of working against their natural traits or their personality or the way that they best function, one of the first things we see is that no matter how little they rest or how much they pull back on work, they actually can be extremely drained. So an example of that would be, I've done some work with an ENFP client. So they're quite extroverted, they love spontaneity and novelty, but they're actually doing one-on-one sessions over and over and over. And in that case, doing potentially just one type of offer in a very consistent routine manner can be, like extremely bad for how they feel, at the end of the day or at the end of the week. So that probably is one instance where, say there's generic business advice out there, which I've heard before, which is like all roads lead to Rome. So let's just have one offer and drive all business to one particular way to make money. I've definitely seen that for a business owner similar to myself, that actually doesn't work. And instead, potentially what's best is a bit more of like, I guess, a mix of offers or a couple of different ways that they may be servicing clients to be able to keep that feeling of novelty or spontaneity happening.
I'm so sitting here nodding my head.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. So when there is some, I guess, prescribed business rules out there around, just have one offer and then lead everybody to that one offer. If you're an ENFP, and I'm sure you can suggest some other personality types, there's a good chance that that's just not going to be the thing that really, I guess, keeps that business owner happy.
Yeah, and so ENFPs, the personality system I use, you may be familiar with the 4-letter codes. So at Brand Whisperers, what we do is use that 4-letter code as sort of like a decoder key to tap into the cognitive functions that personality types use. So we use something called the CAR model, and that's a much longer conversation. You can jump over to my Instagram to see a summary of that. But what we'll do today is give you the top level sort of idea of how that works. So as well as ENFPs, another type that uses a similar or the same cognitive function is ENTPs. So I find this is a similar thing. So these types need different things to pique their interest throughout their business. So if they're heavily involved in routine and doing the same thing every day, or lots of admin, they're going to feel really stagnant and unmotivated in their business. So ENFPs love having conversations and meeting people. And in this world of like the digital age, I've even found that ENFPs prefer, if they can, to meet with people face to face and have those conversations. That, you know, Zoom is great and all, but there's something about being in a room with people. ENFPs often prefer that, and you can't always do that. But the idea is really getting to know yourself and being okay that if you don't feel good doing something, knowing that there is another way to do it.
Yep, completely. Agreed.
Yep. So there's something that you've said the other day, Lynda, as well, with business models that you've noticed in your INFJ and ENFJ clients.
Yeah, so I think that there is, I guess, if I'm relating this back to conventional business advice as well, and then actually moving away from that and doing what works for you personally, is that there are some cases where people talk about it might be leveraged offers or large group offers. And what I've noticed is in INFJ clients that they much prefer to be doing one-on-one sessions with people over a longer term, as opposed to, say, ENFJ clients who are much better at, I guess, taking some information or a way of doing something to like a bigger crowd.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we might look at something and then try to like convince ourselves that this might be the way to make more money, but actually it's not until we kind of use, I guess, our own innate way of being that then we can go, actually, even though I'm being told it might be good to create an online course or to speak, you know, like one to many, I actually will feel much more satisfied or happy if I take individuals on a longer, you know, term, I guess, journey, as opposed to just following generic advice.
Yeah, that's so true. And in the just elaborating a little bit on INFJs and why they do prefer that one-on-one side of things. So INFJs and ENFJs are part of a group that, through my experience and working with brands from a branding perspective, I've come to call the change makers. Because they have a deep desire to see change in the world and for people to realize their potential, but to create, like, going deep behind the curtain of life and really getting to the bottom of what a problem is and creating big change. So the difference with INFJs and ENFJs is INFJs often prefer to do that one-on-one because they can go really deep into a person and uncover all the things that they need to uncover and give them a really robust transformational experience. Whereas ENFJs, sometimes that one-on-one work can be a bit too much. So they're better stepping back and figuring out what their big idea is and then spreading it out more to the world, like being on panels or doing group classes, things like that, where they can really impact a lot of people at once. And Lynda, something really interesting that you were talking about the other day is what you've noticed around money for INFJs is that sometimes, so INFJs have the time and the space to go deep with people and not be distracted by all the other business things. It's good if they create like a package. So say it's a 10-week package or a 6-month package, whatever it is. And then they can book that in with a client and go, okay, we're going through these things over the next X amount of time. And then it's sort of paid up front. So they know if they get, 5 clients in, then they can relax and go, okay, I know I've got this money coming in, I'm going to really help these people. And then they can focus on helping the people instead of all the other side elements of running a business like sales and making money and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I've totally observed that. And it's quite interesting, you know, like looking from the other side of it. So you were just talking about the INFJ. With the ENFJ, I have also noticed that, say they're in a situation where they are trying to do like it the INFJ way, which is like the long packages over a longer term. I have actually noticed that they can, you know, like become quite almost disgruntled or impatient or a bit over it, like just this one person. And we're like still going through this thing. And I've actually heard of some like almost resentment of people wanting to book sessions out to 6 months. And they're like, but I've just got this thing I want to share. And so like in one case, the business owner became disinterested with even increasing their prices even further to be able to be properly remunerated in a one-on-one space, because it was just so dissatisfying. And it wasn't until then we started to negotiate through, I guess, designing their business model, that then we identified that they were an ENFJ. And even though the idea of it being a little bit scary to go from doing one-on-one sessions to group coaching or, you know, like mentoring and memberships, the idea was so, I guess, much more energizing for them, because it was then starting to let them fully express themselves better. So there was a complete shift in that. So we actually saw this really interesting thing happen where they were even like not particularly interested in increasing prices in the one-on-one space anymore. It was like quite apparent that there needed to be a business model shift.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And it is a point to notice as well when you're designing your business, when something feels like it's a bit out of your comfort zone and when it feels wrong. So when your energy is drained and you don't want to do it and it's just like feels like it's uphill all the way, it's probably not the best way for you. But when you're like, I sort of like that idea, but can I really get up in front of groups, or like I feel really vulnerable being in front of people, you know, that's a different feeling, and noticing the differences between that. And just one other thing I wanted to touch on with ENFJs, it's so interesting about what you were saying about this person, you know, sort of having some hesitancy to step out into that. Often ENFJs, poor ENFJs have a bit of a conundrum when it comes to their car model and the cognitive functions that they use, in that they their driver cognitive function, or the one that feels like flow to them, is we call it harmony. So it's like looking after the needs of other people. And then their co-pilot is called perspectives, which is like asking, you know, why something is happening and what are the consequences of that happening. And so sometimes this harmony part of them wants everybody to be happy. And sometimes they've got their perspectives means that the way they think is a little bit different. They've got some different ideas about how they can change the world, but their harmony function, wanting everybody to be happy, feels really nervous putting that out into the world, because some people might disagree with it, and some people, you know, it's not the norm. So it's like they have this underlying quirky different side that they're almost scared to release to the world. But once they do, they actually find that they find their own really, you know, their group of people, I guess. So instead of trying to appease or meet the needs of everybody broadly, they narrow it down to going, okay, what's the lesson or the change that I want to make, finding their core group of people and then doing that really well with them, and, you know, embracing this different idea that they've got.
Yeah, brilliant.
Cool. Excellent. Okay. Is there anything else that you wanted to say about business models and offers? I mean, it's only a very top level convo we're having today. There's a lot, you know, there's a lot more personality types we could go into, and we could go a lot deeper, but this is sort of just an introduction to
yeah, and I think it's good to say that you know, there are lots of different personality types, and there is a good chance that some people listening about doing business better actually are personality types that are quite different to what is out in the conventional business arena.
Such a good point. Should we touch on that quickly?
Yeah, if you want to, because I think that this is a really interesting, I guess, observation around the type of person who actually naturally navigates a world or business space that to me feels, I guess, so kind of maybe unemotional or not intuitive, like very black and white. So it is quite different to at least how I exist,
Yes.
which is quite funny considering I used to be a corporate accountant, but it now is extremely obvious to me that it is not the world that I would potentially naturally exist really healthily in.
Absolutely. And just before we get back to what we were just talking about, I want to address that because it's so funny. I often see ENFPs. So ENFPs are brilliant creative problem solvers. They lead with, or their driver function, the cognitive function they use that sort of is when they're in flow, is creative problem solving and idea generation and novelty. So it's called exploration. So ENFPs are constantly exploring, like they're constantly bringing in all this data and then finding patterns between it and looking for new connections, a new way of doing things, which makes them really great problem solvers. But for some reason, I often find they sort of get stuck in the corporate world, in this world of routines and structure and systems, and it can be sort of stifling for them. I haven't quite figured out why that is. I think it's something to do with their 3-year-old cognitive function, which is memory or introverted sensing. Which likes routine and structure. But for them, so the car model that we use, we have a driver function, which is your flow, a co-pilot, which helps balance out your driver, a 10-year-old that sort of, you can use it, but it's not as sophisticated as your other cognitive functions. And then the 3-year-old baby. And that 3-year-old baby, you should never let drive your car. Like, they can offer really great things. They can, be lots of fun to hang out with, but you shouldn't let them drive their car. And I wonder, this is not conclusive evidence, I wonder if sometimes ENFPs can really get into that 3-year-old driving their car. And I wonder if it's because I often find that ENFPs, or the ones that I work with anyway, have been told from a young age that, they'd forget their head if it wasn't screwed on, or they need to be more organized, or they need to finish the things they start, God damn it. And I don't know if it's a conditioning that then they somehow get into these corporate government worlds that don't sort of feel like they fit so much, but it feels like it's where they should be. Was that your experience?
Yeah, I think that I think there's many times, like when we are like growing up or adults have said particular things to us, or we actually look out to the world and we presume that there's a certain way that things are meant to be done. And so then we think we need to shift or change ourselves to fit into the existing world because that's how it works, or that's how you get things done. Yep. And so by being an ENFP myself, and like you said, leading with this exploration, for me, being extremely spontaneous, I love novelty. Yes, it feels like you've got a supercomputer running in your brain, like you're picking up all this information and stuff around you. You kind of just exist that way. And then you keep thinking, well, actually, maybe I won't do well in business or in my job or whatever if I don't become consistent. And so I think you give it a go. And you're like, well, this is what adults do. So now I'm going to go do this. And then it wasn't until I was like 10 years in of being a corporate accountant, I didn't consciously think I need more spontaneity or novelty in my life, but I did definitely go, this is extremely draining. And I no longer want to sit in like a cubicle in an air-conditioned glass box. I actually want to be out in the world doing all different bits and pieces. So interestingly for me now, I have quite a few different ways that I have income streams in my business model, because that actually keeps, I guess, the novelty alive. Yes. So I can be going between doing a budget, for $10 million or doing emotional behavioral coaching, like with a startup. And so for me, that is extremely energizing and enjoyable.
Yes, absolutely.
But I can see what you mean, that, you're almost drawn or pulled to it, because I think there is this unspoken kind of observation of the world around us that apparently this is the way to do things.
Yes. And
it's not often until
sorry, yes, you go. Sorry.
I was going to say, it's not until you end up actually, I guess, going there and doing it, or something happens and you're like, like I ended up burnt out in the end after having children and working in the corporate world. And I was just like, I'm kind of done. Like, if this is what I have to do to earn money, like, I'm tapping out, people. I'm going to go and do something else, because this just doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good. Yes. But when you
Absolutely.
look at that, and then you look at the people that do thrive in that environment, and I guess this is, another interesting point that I found, is that there are most definitely people that thrive in that environment and do really well. And they actually, are just naturally really good at doing the consistent thing. They're very reflective of stuff in the past. They know how to take particular inputs and to get a very desired outcome. And so it wasn't until we were chatting, about this, and like even doing the certification with you last year, it was like the penny dropped, and I went, there is a very specific person that is good at, like doing money and making a profit at any cost.
Yes.
And I thought it was like, I don't know, high functioning psychopaths, or, like tyrannical people or something. And you're like, no, that's like ENTJs.
Yes, so this brings us back to the original point we were starting on, is that, often when you get into the business world, the first thing you do, because you don't know anything about it, is start looking for what other people are doing, which is natural. And so the way that the business world is structured, traditionally, I mean, and let me preface this by saying any personality type can do anything. I know some people worry about personality type boxing people in, so I'm not saying that, that these things are, hard and fast and that's the way it is. It's just, a tendency, I guess. So the way that I sort of discovered this was, years ago when I first started my business, I was really struggling, and I'm like, I'm doing all the things. Why is this so hard? And I somewhere online found my personality type, which is actually through Personality Hacker. If you want to go deeper into personality type theory, Personality Hacker, the people that I did my certification for personality profiling from. It was like a couple of years course, and heading over to LA to do an event with them to prove that, I knew my stuff. So that was brilliant. But when I found them, I started Googling about personality types and business, and I found this graph, like it was the changing point of my business. And on this graph, it ranked personality types and how much money they made. And INFPs, which is my type, was at the bottom of the list. So I'm like, well, at least there's a reason, like there's a reason clearly for this, but what is that reason? So I sort of delved into that. And through my years working with businesses and studying personality types and business design, there are types that traditionally have run bigger corporate businesses and that thrive in the business world. So one of the I guess the components of that is being an extrovert. So just by being an extrovert, you're more likely to put yourself out there. So when you go into the business world and start learning from it, the first people you're likely to see are extroverted people that are like, cool, I'll put myself out there. If you're an introvert, then you can be looking at that information going, oh my God, do I really have to do that? Like, this is really scary and feels icky. Which is exactly what I felt. So once I started understanding that, then you can start going, okay, well, what's another solution to that? And so through my time studying this, there are particular types that, like you said, Lynda, can run businesses better. So these are the types that in the front of their car model use extroverted thinking, or what we call effectiveness, or introverted sensing, which we call memory. And these are the functions. So effectiveness users are really good at resource management, how to use time and money to get the best outcomes, what people need to be in what seats in an organization, setting up and following systems. Introverted sensing users are really good at routine and just following the system and making it running really smoothly. So these types are really important to society. I mean, these are the types that make sure things get done, and they get done in a way that is not chaotic, so society completely falls apart. So, examples of this might be ENTJs and ESTJs. I call the corporates. I had an ESTJ client come to me for branding, and she was starting a business model. And it was phenomenal. She had the biggest, most detailed business plan I have ever seen, and she followed it through step by step to the letter. And she loved it. She was thriving on it. Whereas if you got like an ENFP or an INFP, they'd be like, oh my God, I have to do this to run a business. And, you know, and that's what we're figuring out. Like the answer is no. Other types that you often see in bigger corporates, you know, government and things, ISTJs work really well with, you know, I call them the rock. The name I've given them is the rock, is because they're just so consistent and you can rely on them, and they will take a system and just make it happen day after day. They will optimize it and keep it running smoothly. So these are all the types that traditionally have fit into these bigger business models, and it does work. It does create outcomes. But for those of us that don't use those cognitive functions in the front of our car model, it can feel really jarring and we can feel really pressured to do it. Whereas if we looked at the functions that we use in our car models, we can find a different, I want to say more authentic, I don't like the word authentic, but you know, just a way that feels better to us, and the way that makes us happy running it, rather than feeling like we have to do it the way those guys do it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good kind of acknowledgement. So if you're observing somebody who can do, I guess, something just to get an outcome, they know that if I put these inputs in, I'm going to get this outcome. That's a very different way to function than, say, like for yourself as an INFP, where you definitely need to line those things up with your values, like your self-expression and ethics and conviction, and those things like that are super important. And so you're not able to move forward or to take particular inputs just to get an outcome. Like it's just not within you. Yes. And so I see that in business also. So you can propose an idea to an INFP and they may appear to be not doing anything with it, or pausing or stagnating. And as a result of that, it's not until like these internal components around their values and their ethics kind of all click into place that then they will then suddenly move. And then you go, right, I thought they did nothing for a month, but actually they were going and doing the inner work. Like it's almost like invisible work, but they're doing it. And then, yeah, once they get going, it's like boom, boom, boom. So that's quite an interesting, I think, observation that I've made, is particularly around INFPs, is that you can't force them to move until they're ready. And so I think things like intensives, or really like stuck in stone coaching packages, I found for them, like if it's every 2 weeks, it's like you might get through that 12 weeks and be like, I'm not even sure that this has really been worthwhile, but it's because they're doing the internal like lining up of everything that's important to them, or that it is, you know, like done in a way that feels right, and then you'll see the product of that work.
Yes, absolutely. And INFPs are the types that they're often underestimated. Like people look at them and go, oh, they're so sweet and lovely, and you know, they're so calm, and you know, but they, you know, they don't move very quickly. But the thing is, once they get things aligned and they're sure of what they want to do, they can be forces to be reckoned with. They can move mountains. And I call them the torchbearer, is the name I've given them, because they often, once their values are aligned and they found the thing they want to fight for, and they feel really good about that, then they will make stuff happen. But if they have not found that, you can't motivate them by an outcome. You can't motivate them by going, but you will get more money, or but you will be more productive, or you will see, you know, this.
They're never motivated by money solely.
Yeah, which is, you know, so that, you know, when I found that graph, like INF, and their income was low, that is that reason. They're not as motivated by money, but you know, if you're running
they're
a business,
motivated by the cause.
They're motivated by the cause,
the change.
And so this just, you know, as well as running our own businesses better, what the personality system that we're sort of creating here can also be really good for you understanding your own clients as well, and going, okay, well, if I'm coaching an INFP or working with an INFP and I'm going, but you can make this much money, and they're going, it's like, yeah, money is important, but you have to find a different way to get them there. So it's like, how is this going to help the cause that they're fighting? So it can help for your own business, but also, you know, with how you work with clients as well.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. What about, so we've done business models. So what about making and managing money?
Yeah, well, I'll let you kick off that one because you're the money queen.
Okay, so I guess we just kind of like I dipped our toe in that already, speaking about INFPs and how that you can't really entice them with money. It needs to be values and like cause driven.
Yeah.
So let's then maybe mention some stuff around ENFPs, or I guess people that potentially I guess work from a place of needing spontaneity, like where they don't have, I guess, is it memory as one of their
so memory is their 3-year-old. So that's
3-year-old, yeah.
Yeah. But so one thing I just want to add there is memory is not about whether they've got a good memory. It's about so memory or introverted sensing is about looking to the past and seeing what worked and then repeating that. So it's about routine, structure, tried and true methods, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So with an ENFP, I've noticed that because that isn't their strength, they actually almost need some help or assistance in how they're going to go about making and managing their money. They have this almost sense about them, like I'm going to wing it, or I'm just going to give this a go. I'm going to throw spaghetti at the wall.
Which is what they do.
Yes. And that's how they kind of go forward. So the idea of sitting down and creating a plan and actually having to enact a financial plan of some kind is a form of torture. But what I have noticed is that if you can pin them down and get them to do a bit of planning, even if they're given permission to not have to enact that plan, it actually can be a very good decision-making tool. And it can help them in regards to making some decisions like around what prices should be to actually potentially hit an annual income goal.
Yeah.
It can also then, I guess, assist them with understanding where do I need to try and direct the very short attention span that I have, so that then I can move offers and I guess whatever their income streams might be in a direction that is going to produce the amount of money that they're hoping to like get in return. So if we think about it, I guess in that regard, it means that, like I could suggest till the cows come home that they should sit down every single month and do a monthly financial review, but that's not necessarily going to be the thing that they are actually going to do. They might need to set up an accountability meeting or do it quarterly or have somebody do it for them. So outsourcing detailed stuff like bookkeeping and then potentially just having a report sent through to them might be a better way to go than to continually tell yourself, I'm going to sit here and reconcile these transactions in my bookkeeping, because it potentially will just never ever happen.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. It's about knowing, like, these, if you refer to your car model, knowing the things that are in the back seat of your car model that can be stresses or blind spots, and instead of beating yourself up going, why can't I just be better at this, it's going, this is not something I'm naturally good at. And the thing is that in this car model, the cognitive functions are polarities. So your driver function is the exact opposite to your 3-year-old. And so you work on a moving scale. So if you are trying to be in your 3-year-old, so if ENFPs are trying to be in routine and structure constantly, that's actually dragging them away from being in exploration in their driver state. So they're actually less effective and less in their genius state as a whole, because they're using this function to be routine and structured. That means they can't get into their problem solving, innovative, personable genius state. So instead of beating yourself up about, oh, I'm not good at this, either put structures in place and do it in a different way that works for you, or make a plan to outsource it, and don't feel bad about that.
Yeah, I think as you're mentioning the car model like system, I was just having this vision that I think you're going to have to put a picture up with the recording so that people can see what you're referring to.
Yes,
because it's actually quite an interesting way to see it visually, to understand, I guess, how we're working and what might be a natural strength of ours and what might be something that's a bit more difficult to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Particularly if you're looking at this for yourself, to then start to really, I guess, understand what way can I go forward that makes it a bit easier or a bit more easeful when it comes to doing some of these things. So definitely consistency would be a difficult thing for an ENFP.
Yep, or an ENTP often.
Yep. Yeah.
And you mentioned
Have
something when we were talking before. I just wanted to touch on this because I thought it was really important. You mentioned that getting ENFPs to follow profit first. So there's a really famous book, Profit First,
yeah.
that is a lot of people use and find really great, and it is great. Like, it is a great book. But tell me your insights, what you said about that for ENFPs.
Yeah, so I think, like sometimes we can read a book or we can have somebody refer a book, like to us. And then we go to enact it and we're like, I don't even know how this person does this because it just like doesn't make sense. So there is that book Profit First. It is obviously implying that there is a way that you can, I guess, pull profit out of an existing business or be more profit aware. But I have not ever really found an ENFP that can do it well whatsoever. And so what that indicates to me is that it actually is a book for very much more like a linear person who appears to be more disciplined, who is happy to then like sit down in the details and segment out their income on a regular basis, which is something that won't naturally happen, I think, for an ENFP. I don't even think I've heard of like an INFP doing it either.
I haven't been successful with it, but I still think it's a really sound book. And this is the thing that I wanted to touch on. Actually, one of the most important things I think out of this whole conversation for me is to be self-aware and be conscious of the information and advice that you're taking in. The most clever, wonderful, successful business geniuses may be spot on with what they say, but if it's not going to work for you, you can spend years trying to go down that path and going, this just feels really bad, and you're not successful. So the more that you're aware of yourself, and whether it's you use personality typing or other tools, there's many other tools like Lynda, your archetypes really help. There's other strengths finders and the Enneagram, like or just whatever tools that you, whether it's meditation, journaling, whatever tools you use to be more self-aware. It's like every time you get advice or information or read a book, look at it and go, but does this work for me? Like, is it going to work for me? Because what's the point of having a business that you made presumably to get out of the corporate world, set you free, do things your own way, and then sort of feel like you're tied back down to doing these things in a way that you don't want to do as well? Like, it's just a bit pointless.
Yep. And I think that's what you have to recognize, is that freedom is different for different people.
Yes.
So like for an INFP, like freedom would be having a lot of space and time in your, your whole
Time to
business
daydream.
model, the way that you do. Yeah.
Yes.
And then potentially freedom for me is around choice and being around things and like being able to pick or choose what I do and when I do it.
Yeah.
And then I can think about other types where freedom actually is having this sense of relief because they know what they're doing every single day and when they're doing it and how they're doing it.
Yeah.
So I think we have to be really quite aware of what that definition of freedom or whatever it might be that we're seeking is for us.
Yeah, exactly.
One other thing around making and managing money I just thought of was that I think there are particular types that empathize or over empathize a lot when it comes to making and managing money. I don't know if you've observed this also.
Oh yeah, can I just tap like, this is just really important, really interesting. Just before you go into this, I wanted to, like, Lynda uses a really awesome matrix to work with people and money. So to make it easy for people to figure out where their problem areas are with money. So Lynda, you've just said making money and managing money, but then the other part of the matrix is the internal world and the external world. So just by looking at that and going, well, where's my problem with money? Is it like an internal problem about making money, which I think this is what you're tapping into right now with the INFP and INFJ. So that's a making money internal problem. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Keep going with what you're about to say.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes we forget, like, the models we use, that we you forget to. There's so much more in there that you don't promote it, or not that you're promoting it, but you don't realize how amazing it is.
Yeah, exactly. So what's really interesting is that a lot of people presume that they have, like, I guess, a knowledge gap, or that they actually don't know how to do a calculation, or they just, need the how to do something. And I guess what I'm referring to here when it comes to like an INFP and an INFJ is that if they're not making enough money, it's potentially not an intellectual issue whatsoever or a knowledge gap. It actually is, could be, I was going to say, I don't want to say it is, because, it's not necessarily absolute, but it is potentially because of this, I guess, strong empathetic kind of streak that they have.
Absolutely.
And I was wondering if you'd noticed that also.
Yeah. So again, INFJs in particular in their car model, similar to the ENFJs, they use harmony, which is, getting everyone's needs met. And what this can look like for those types is giving and not receiving for themselves. It can look like over giving, like I've got to look after everybody else, but then they forget to look after themselves and they burn out and they make no money. So they can often feel like, oh, but this other person needs help. How can I, but they can't afford it. I can't just not help them because, there's needs there that need to be met. And that reminds me of a conversation, Lynda, we had about, whether people can, when you have clients that say they can't afford it, and looking into, whether they really can or can't afford it. A story that comes to mind was that it was somebody that you follow, Lynda, I think, about she had a client who said that she couldn't afford her rates. And so she was giving her discounts. And then she found out in a conversation that this person that she was giving discounts to had actually bought and paid outright for homes for her 3 children. So whether they can or can't afford it is subjective, not absolute.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's why empathy is such an interesting kind of observation within ourselves when it comes then to setting up how we do, like any business practice, or how we have boundaries. What are some of the things that we can ensure that we're doing? Because when we do look at, I guess, a lot of this personality typing and income-based stuff, would you say that it's those that appear to be like personality types that appear to be a bit less empathetic or a bit less emotional that are actually bringing in the most money in a comparative
that can work? And it's like, and I guess it's not I don't know, I don't want to say that they're not empathetic. These things are always on a scale. Like, people that focus on outcomes can still be empathetic. I think it's just when they're weighing things up, they're not so focused on it. They're weighing those up differently. And, where that realm of right and wrong is, like, that's up to everybody to decide their own place on that. But it can be that that INFPs or INFJs can fall into that category of going, everybody else needs to be looked after before I'm looked after. Whereas maybe a different type, like an ESTJ or an ENTJ, looks at it in a different light, going, well, but I'm creating this outcome for them, and the outcome is going to be amazing and change their life, so I deserve to be remunerated for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just one last quick point on making and managing money. And I know this is quite, I guess, INFP, ENFP centric, probably because that's what we are.
Yes.
And I seem to get a lot of clients through that are INFJs and ENFJs. And I think that's a discussion for another day, why we attract particular people.
Oh, absolutely.
But I guess under the making and managing money piece, we've discussed before that there can be ways that I guess we price so that then we can kind of assist ourselves when it comes to our income. So I guess focusing on INFPs who unfortunately are down the bottom end of the scale when it comes to the comparative, I guess, stats on income for personality typing. We've discussed before how being a high-priced expert is actually a really clever way for some INFPs to go. And that then allows for so many benefits in their business. That really suits their kind of, I guess, if we're going to generalize, their personality type.
Yeah, so INFPs can So a lot of INFPs feel like the world goes too fast for them already. And then when you get in the business world, that often goes really fast. All the different elements of running a business can feel really overwhelming to them. So for an INFP, like running a business, like, I guess thinking of my business, like if I tried, there's some businesses out there, like we'll do your website in a day. Like if I tried to do that, I would just die. That low cost, high volume thing for INFPs can be really stressful. Now, that's not to say that they can't do that. You could run a business that way. It's being self-aware and knowing like that is going to stress me out. So if it's my dream to run that business, for that component, I need a way to manage that or somebody else to help me. But if you are a sole trader, a way to work with that is by, INFPs are really analytical. They're really strategic. So a way they can do that is by using their knowledge to create a higher demand for their product, becoming experts in their field, and then charging a higher price, which is going to, drive down how many people can work with you. But then they're working quite deeply, quite closely with a smaller number of people at a higher price, so their nervous systems can just, chill out.
Yeah, I've completely noticed the same thing. When I do some work with INFPs, I find that the more space that we can bring into their days, weeks, and months, and to actually allow them to, like have decent holidays, to be able to breathe, to step away from all of, the things that need to be done, to really enjoy their rich inner world, actually is very regenerating and really replenishing for them in their business.
Yes.
So I think having, where possible, a higher priced kind of expert or packages or individual consultations that are really remunerating can be very, very beneficial for that type.
Absolutely. And something that's just come to mind for that, I just hear INFPs everywhere going, but I want to help everybody. I want to change this thing. And, I want to help. So INFPs often love to help the underdog. So if there is like a group of people or something, where people, are trying but not getting there, they can sometimes work in non-profits or charities. Like in the traditional, like when you hear of personality types, they often say that INFPs are best working in charities. I haven't found that. I don't think that's necessarily true all the time. And I feel like it pigeonholes INFPs into going, well, I can't run a successful business. I have to work for a not-for-profit. But there's ways around that. So if you are an INFP and you're like, but I want to help everyone and I don't want to be inaccessible, there are ways around that. Like, so you can have like a premium a product or service offering that is high priced, but then you can offer free things or low cost things for the people that can't afford it. So there are ways to make sure that you're looked after and your way of being is looked after, and you're serving the people that you want to serve.
Yeah. And I think that, I guess probably one recognition around that is, like we were saying, how some people in the corporate world can easily distinguish like what inputs need to go into something to then get the outcome that you want.
Yeah.
I find that with INFPs that's not necessarily the case. So I guess when they are potentially thinking about a lower priced offer or something free or how they're going to go about things, sometimes there can be a lot of fiddling around, and they may actually need help, I guess, just extracting what is the thing that can bring in some good bread and butter income that will pay for the majority of what I need, and then do that, and then use, if you want, the free time or the mucking around, all the bits and pieces to then do the other bits. But they need to be really careful not to get distracted with all the other little bits and details and stuff.
Yes. Oh gosh, yes.
Otherwise,
that's a really good point.
They'll just fiddle with that stuff forever.
Oh my God, yes.
Shush. Like their inner world. So it's like sort out, and that's really difficult for them to do, right? It's really difficult to go, I just have to do this thing. It's like accepting that, like we live in a world where we actually do need money. And so then you're effectively saying to them, I need you to do this thing that brings in bread and butter income so you can create space to then go and fiddle on some other bits and pieces if you want.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. It's so true. Cool.
Do we have
Okay.
time to do the third pillar?
The branding and marketing. Yeah,
Or-
well, let's just go over it fairly quickly, and then maybe we can do another one of these that we go into it more deeply. So I'll start off with this one because it's the brand and marketing, which is, you know, sort of my little spot. So often what I find when people come into business, whether, you know, especially when it's your first business, is that there's all these rules that you have to do X to be successful. Like, you know, when you're branding yourself, like you have to have a logo and you have to have a big website and it has to look this certain way. And so that's not necessarily the case. Like there are businesses out there that run without these things. Like I was just talking to a business owner the other day, and they were like, they'd actually run their business without a website at all. And then it got to a point where so many people were asking for it. They were like, oh, okay, we'll put up a website. But they were like, they don't need it for their business. It doesn't generate any income, but they're like, oh, cool, we'll chuck one up. But the idea that you have to start out by having, you know, certain things, you know, is not necessarily true. And also, with the branding side of things, as I've been working with personality types, I've found that there are certain things that each personality type prefers to have in their brand. Like INFJs, for example, love symbolism. So, you know, INFJs go so deep, and there's often, you know, behind the curtain thinking, or, you know, a spiritual element or something behind their business and their brands. They often go quite deep. And so their logos can be like a quick snapshot representation of all the deep things that, you know, their customers are going to be learning with them. So symbolism is really important. So if you are an INFJ business owner or someone that's working with an INFJ business, even just knowing that's important to start with can like really give your branding and your designing your business a boost.
Yep. Most definitely. I've noticed that with the INFJs as well. And actually sometimes with INFPs also, like they'll have like a little twinkle of something in their logo that is a little bit different, or like, yeah, there's just particular elements to it. Whereas for myself, I'm a bit like, you could put a blob of paint with a letter in it, and I'm like, done, we're great here, let's move on.
I'm so excited by it. See, this is why I get so excited about what we do. So yes, so INFPs do have a little sparkle of something, but for INFPs, it's a little different. So if you just looked at an INFP and INFJ logo, sometimes they can look similar. So, you know, they're often intricate. There is some symbolism in there. But INFJs, like, it's like the logo is showing a simplified version of their philosophy. Whereas INFPs, it's all about meaning. Like INFPs love to have little hidden meanings stashed away. It's like a little jigsaw. I don't have a jigsaw puzzle.
I can think of many as you're saying this. I'm like,
yeah, it's
tick,
like
yes.
Like it's like
yes.
if you look at this on the surface, it's one thing, but if you look deeper, there's all these hidden meanings that are communicating to you subconsciously. Like, so if you are an INFP or working with an INFP, often having like this little hidden meanings hidden away in your brand is going to be a part of that. And then when you're talking about ENFPs, so ENFPs, I call them the BFF. Like they're the best, the BFF, so the best.
They're your buddy.
Yeah, best, yeah. I'm like, but what is BFF? I'm so excited I can't even talk. So for ENFPs, their brand doesn't really matter that much. Like, you know, yeah, you still want to go out looking, you know, professional or whatever, but I've actually seen some ENFPs that don't even have a brand. They chuck some videos up and that kicks their business off, because ENFPs, being the BFF, they thrive over having conversations. So if ENFPs are having conversations with people, it's going to be their video. It's going to be referrals. It's going to be getting out on the street and having just casual conversations with people that start building up their business, rather than having this particularly designed logo, which is not to say that it's not important in some cases, but it's just knowing that which of those things is going to really give you hack your business, or give you like a foothold into, which way you should go and what's important.
Yeah, and I think it's just good to recognize that even though somebody might say you need something, this is really about, I guess, stepping back and going, actually, do I? Because I guess that's the whole point of this conversation, is that conventional business isn't really working for everybody.
Yeah.
And being able to be in a place where we go, like I'm an ENFP, and actually, having very specific types of shades or a logo is not so important to me.
No. But
In
there's
some cases I've
something,
seen
yeah,
brands where there's like, it's just black and white.
and it doesn't matter. But something you said
Yeah.
earlier, this just tapping into this, is what have you noticed about INFPs and their brands? Do you remember what you said about that?
No, what did I say?
So like you're saying, ENFPs can go, blah, yeah, look, that's pretty much right, because it is their person that grows their business. You said to me that, I know this is true as an INFP, INFPs can obsess over their brands.
Yes. Yeah.
And so the reason that is, so yeah,
themselves, right? And
sorry.
they can't even imagine it being another way.
Yes. Yep.
Yep.
And the reason this is because INFPs are part of the group that I've identified as the individualists. So INFPs, INTPs, ISFPs, and ISTPs. Like, personal integrity is so important to these types. So for INFPs and ISFPs, it's about a personal integrity of who they are. Like, if their brand does not represent who they are, they will feel like they're ripping people off, like they're being inauthentic, and they'll just really struggle to put themselves out there. So, but that can mean that they obsess over some, like, fiddly little things like, oh, but that one word's not right, or that color's not right. And oh gosh, I know I do this as myself. It's like such a pain sometimes. And while it is important, to them, it's important that they remember that, I guess when you're thinking, weighing it up and going, is it that important? Like, there does still need to be some room for, outcomes. Like, am I obsessing over my brand so much that I'm actually not selling any products? Is this good enough? You can ask yourself as an INFP. And then for ISTPs and INTPs, it's about the truth. So INTPs I call truth seekers, and ISTPs I call lone wolves, because they will also have an idea about what they want to do in the world, but it's more about accuracy, and there's a truth to be found. And if their brand doesn't represent that truth, then it's not right. Like, it's like, I can't put something out in the world that is not truthful and accurate. So these types with their brands, that becomes a very important thing, whereas somebody else might just go, yeah, look, and I've had types like that, other types that, an ESTJ, for example, that just goes, yeah, you show them their logo and you're like, look, this is enriched in everything that you are. And they're like, yeah, that looks good. That's fine. Yep. I'm like, you're happy with the colors? Yep. That'll do. Yep. That serves a purpose. So it's like, which is, neither of these is wrong or right. It's just understanding why you're doing those things and making your own judgment call about how important it is.
Yeah. Whew.
I know, so
I just
many
feel
things.
like we sped talk.
I know, we're trying to talk so quickly. So I
think we were going to talk about marketing, but I reckon that could be a whole separate conversation at some point.
Oh yes,
like
it could.
Personality type
could be.
Because if you crack the like, what is it? Crack the can.
Crack the can open.
Saying? Yeah. When it comes to social media, do I need it? Do I need to be writing short posts or bite-sizing things? Like, there's so many rules around marketing that I think that we could definitely just speak only just about that.
Yes, we could do. Let's do that again. I think that covers all the notes that I had. The only other things, the types I had for branding, I had a couple more examples, because I feel like we've gone very INFP and ENFP. It's some other types like ESFJs. They're a type that fall into the realm of the what I call the traditionalists. And I found ESFJs in their logos and their branding have some sort of touch to family. Like, family and tradition is so important to these types. So they'll often have like a heritage. I had one client that, their family heritage was really important to show in their brand. And another type that their father started the business 50 years ago, and in their branding, they had old branding that hadn't been updated, and they knew it needed updating, but they didn't want to let go of this family, the family element that was running through the business. So we had to find a way to like freshen their brand and their logo, but still keep that element of their family history in it. So that's something that's, you know, I found is a pattern in ESFJs. Then INTJs, they like things to be really on point and really efficient. They like things to be quite streamlined, and Leo like often be technically advanced and quite smooth and sleek. Sleek is the word for INTJs. So yeah, they're just a couple of things that I've noticed in the patternings of some personality types. But like you say, we're sort of out of time now, so we'll wrap it up, and maybe we'll do this again.
I think we should.
We should. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we farewell?
No, I think that they're three, like, yeah, like pretty important pillars, like we said. So it's like business model, suite of offers, making and managing money, and branding, and we'll get around to marketing. Yeah, in regards to it. And I guess probably the biggest takeaway, I think, is that acknowledging the way that we naturally function, or the way that we most prefer to work, is actually, I guess, my version, and I guess you agree also, right?
Yes.
That this is a way of doing business better through the lens of self-awareness, and I guess using your own internal compass as a way to decide what business, I guess, strategies and tactics to take.
Yeah, exactly. It's finding your own way. Like you can't, you know, all the successful people out there, you can't copy what they do and be successful. Like, you know, as hard as it is, there is no one way to do business, and every way everybody does it and gets there in the end will be some sort of touch of their own flavor in there, if they, you know, if they want to be happy as well.
Yep. Wonderful.
Okay.
Will we chat again?
Yes, we will chat again sometime. Thank you, everybody. We hope that was interesting for you, and we'll see you again soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.